Hi, everybody. Thank you. If you're on the other side of the screen and here to hear our story, I myself am in this office by myself telling you it. So I'm just so happy you're here. um, but my name's Kara, and I'm the founder of Safe Passage. And I would just love to tell you our story. There is a reason I love to tell this story. I call our story a cascade of miracles. It's just been one thing after the other. And on my part, this whole journey, I've been a lot like Jonah, just how far can I get from the call? And if the ship's going the other way, like catch me the first ticket. And just tried to give it to anybody else, tried to run. And the Lord has just, out of fear, and the Lord has just provided a cascade of miracles that has anytime I need faith to stir up, I just start telling this story. And so this isn't just a story of how a ministry came about to combat child trafficking. But it's a story I love because not only is it that, but we're all on our own journey. We all need a little bit of faith now and again, that the Lord does have a plan and a will for our life. And if we will cling and pray and trust Him, He really will help us. And so I love when the disciples asked Jesus, teach us how to pray. He said, pray like this. Pray that the Lord's will would be done on earth as it is in heaven. And so if we will hold the line of faith, if we will wait on Lord, if we will have bold prayers, and trust that God is all powerful and He does have a plan and purpose for our life, then He certainly will. Heaven will collide with earth to facilitate His will. And so things have just happened over the years that were more than we could have ever asked, thought, or imagined, or have begun to. And so this isn't just a story about a ministry, it's a story about God. And I hope it inspires you and where you're at in your life today. So where did all this begin? It was in 2018, and I was working for a national organization that was working with trafficked women at the time. And I'd been there about 3.5 years, and they promoted me to do some work across the state. And as part of that, I was attending a pretty large scale conference put on by the Office for Victims of Crime out from Washington, D.C. And so they came to Kentucky. I'm young, I'm in this conference, and the speaker just begins to say, hey, everybody in Kentucky, did you know that, yeah, we're learning about human trafficking here today, but did you know Kentucky has no services for trafficked youth? And I'm sitting there minding my own business, thinking I can't help with this issue. And sitting next to me in the back row was one of our state detectives, and he elbow punched me. And he just leaned over. He said, "Are you listening?" And whatever overcame me, I don't know. I don't know. Must have been holy curiosity or stupidity or something. I don't think it was faith, but I walked out and I called my boss at the time. I just said, listen, I know we serve women. I know that's our mission, but what would it take for us to do the research to see what Kentucky needs for kids and if we should be meeting that need? And so they were very generous and gave me a loose leash for 6 months to do that research. And towards the end of it, we all came together. Him, me, the national board, and we all agreed on one thing. That mission would be such a big mission, it would need to be its own thing. And so I thought to myself, oh, okay, yeah, if they can't do it, I can't do it, we can't do it. And in that moment, my boss looked at me and the national board looked at me and they said, we think you should do it. And I went home and cried my eyes out, is what I did. And I just I was overwhelmed in fear. I said, Lord, I can't do it. I can't start my own nonprofit. I can't solve this issue. I absolutely cannot. And that whole summer in 2018, He had me in the book of Daniel. And all summer long, I was grieving. I wasn't going to do this thing, but I was grieving that I wasn't going to do it. It was like this tension of like, I'm not going to do it, but I'm sad I'm not going to do it, but I'm happy I'm not going to be scared because I'm not going to do it. And it was just whole tension. And so I was in the book of Daniel toward the end of the summer. And around Daniel chapter 10, I believe, Daniel gets this dream, this vision, and he doesn't understand it, and he knows it's important. It has big implications, but he doesn't understand it. And so Daniel, he begins to fast and pray. And through 21 days of fasting and prayer to understand this thing he doesn't get, an angel appears. And so Daniel, poor guy, faints. And the angel picks him up and strengthens him. And I just began bawling my eyes out right there. I just resonated and I said, that's me, God. I said, it doesn't matter if you send me an angel to clarify what you want me to hear. It doesn't matter. I'm too weak to hear this. I just bawling my eyes out, weeping. I said, Lord, if you want me to understand what you're saying, to receive a message from you, I said, you got to pick me up. You got to strengthen me to even stand on my feet and hear this message and receive it. I prayed that. And the second prayer I prayed out of that book of Daniel was a curious thing. I had realized there was spiritual warfare in the heavenlies. And so Daniel, he's praying and fasting for 21 days. But when the angel gets to him, he says, Daniel, I know it's day 21 and I'm here on this day, but Daniel, I set out from heaven. I set out from my post on the first day you set out to pray and seek the Lord. I was dispatched the first day you prayed and fasted. And so I'm unraveling this in my mind. I'm like, so you're telling me there's spiritual warfare in the realm of the spirit that the Lord actually has to work through on our behalf. Because this archangel came, the archangel confronted the spirit prince of Persia, so that the messenger angel could, deviate and get to Daniel. And so I said, well, let's just cover it. And I prayed a bold prayer and I said, Lord, if there's anything locked in the realm of the spirit that needs to be unlocked for me to do this, would you do it? Would you unlock it? And I thought I was just cleaning my hands. I thought I'll just pray it and be done because the Lord's not going to answer it. He's not going to touch it. And I'm home free. I'm cut loose. I just prayed a prayer to clean my hands. And the next day, would you believe it? I get a phone call from this lady who was in the community I had met once. I barely knew. And she called and she said, I heard you're praying about doing this thing for kids. And you probably didn't know I have a family foundation. But if you say yes to God, we're going to write you a $50,000 check to start. So I was like, yeah, I think that's a sign. And that I can't say no to. And the Lord continued to be faithful. The next week, the governor and his wife at that time called us and said, we heard you're having a potluck fundraiser in your backyard. Not only do we want to come, but we'd like to move it to the historic governor's mansion and host it for you. And so, I mean, I'm a nobody. I'm don't remember how old I was, like 24, maybe younger. And nobody. And these things are happening too. And even our logo at the time was completely supernatural. If you're ever curious if God is in the tiny, minute details of what he wants to happen on earth. So my sister's in branding and marketing. And at the time, she had said, I got paying clients. You're not a paying one. So we're going to do your logo for you, but get yourself together. Tell me exactly what you want. And one thing we're not going to do is we're not going to play around with multiple concepts. We're going to get in, we're going to get out with your project. And I said, yes, ma'am. And, I tell her safe passage. I want, a doorway, a passageway where we're leaving the old into the new, out of the world, into the kingdom, out of darkness, into light. And I told her, just give me a passageway, safe passage. And, so she's working on that for me, and I go to lunch to meet somebody new who's getting connected with us, and her name's Andrea. She later became our chairman, and she's a realtor in Kentucky. And so she begins telling me stories about how she was the realtor who sold the deal on the famous Kentucky Castle. And I'm not a Disney princess, so none of that's resonating with me. And she's sitting there telling me how every time I think about Safe Passage, I just see this castle, this beacon on a hill, and I'm just sitting there eating my salad, like, cool. I don't. And would you believe it? I go home from that lunch. I open up my email from my sister who said we're in and out, no, not multiple concepts. She changed the concept without consulting me. She didn't give me a passage way. She gave me a castle. A castle. Without consulting me. And a month later, I'm sitting at Southeast Christian Church in Louisville, and I look up and I see 3 janitors carrying this life-size castle. It takes 3 of them to carry it down the hallway. It's so big. And I make a few phone calls, and I get to this event company that owns it, and I'm like, my guys, tell me about this castle I saw. And they're like, girl, that was the centerpiece to a 3-piece, 6 foot tall, 12 foot long, $5,000 product. That's a castle. And I just said, guys, God's moving on this. I said, what would it take to borrow your $5,000 castle for a night at the governor's mansion? And guys, that is the hilarious, faithful touch of God in our beginning days. And 2 years go on, and we're fundraising for the mission. And I'm a bulldozer kind of girl, like, let's solve a problem. But 2 years in, 2020 rolls around, and the world is shutting down with COVID, with everything. And my life isn't shutting down just because of COVID, bringing everything to a screeching halt. My life is shutting down because the child welfare system is telling us the group home thing, the shelter thing for kids that we've been fundraising for and planning for, and is outdated. And the child welfare system is reforming into in-home prevention and support services. And they're telling me the group home is just outdated and they don't need it. And I'm sitting there in 2020. My life isn't halting because of just COVID. It's halting because there are systemic issues I can't solve. And so in the middle of 2020, I'm having a midlife crisis. I'm having a faith crisis. I'm having a come to Jesus moment. And for 14 nights, I'm on the floor of my bedroom all by myself, crying my eyes out, telling God, I feel like a joke. I feel like you have made a laughing stock of me. I've been fundraising in the community for 2 years with this vision, and all of a sudden, the reform is telling me it's outdated and not needed. And Lord, I don't know what to do, and this is a problem larger than I can solve. I said, but one thing, I'm not going down with a sinking ship that you put me on. I said, Lord, you're going to have to ride it in the sky. But if you don't ride it in the sky, I am jumping ship. Are the shameful words. I cried my eyes out and told the Lord for 14 straight nights in a row. And 2 weeks later, after saying that for 14 nights, I walk into a coffee shop, and I see a pastor I know, and he's like, hey, we haven't caught up at, COVID happening. He didn't know what was going on in my life. We hadn't caught up. So he said, how about I pray for you while you're here? And I said, can't hurt, can't get worse. And so he begins to pray for me. And in the middle of his prayer, he stops and he gets quiet. I'm like, what? And he just said, I hear the Lord saying, don't abandon ship. And I walked home in a daze, in a spiral. And I just said, Lord, I might as well press you for perfectionism. And I said, just to be clear, if you wrote it in the sky, like, got it. But let me press you. If you were willing to write it in the sky, I said, Lord, I asked you to tell me not to jump ship. I said, why'd you tell me not to abandon ship if you were going to be so clear? And he convicted me on abandoning the assignment. And so I'm going home and I'm praying. And over the course of 2 days, I began seeing a vision I could not muster up in 2 years. And I begin to see the Lord take the four walls of a group home that has kids for a matter of 2 months, 6 months, and unboxing it into a community based evangelistic and discipleship model that can reach kids where they're at in any county, in any city, over the long term. And so I just said, Lord, I need the vision. I said, I need an office in Louisville if we're going to do this, and I need a director who can lead this if we're going to do this. I said, you're giving me the vision. I need the rest. And 2 days later, a friend of mine is in Louisville. She has a new job. So I decided to take her lunch, and I go visit her. And I walk into this Christian ministry nonprofit that I've never been to. And I open the door, and this vision floods me, and I see these offices, and I see myself moving into the corner office, and I'm ordering furniture online, and I'm moving in people I've hired, and we're working around the table, and I think to myself, oh my gosh, what has gotten to your head? You need to go see a counselor right now. You think so highly of yourself moving into the corner office of a place you've never been to. So I walk in thinking, well, my next appointment is the counseling office, but I have lunch with my friend, and the CEO walks out of the corner office I had gotten that crazy vision over. He sits down with us and is chatting for about 20 minutes, and towards the end of it, he says, I have got to tell you, when you walked in, I had a vision of you moving into this office. Oh, yeah. And I just said to him, I said, sir, you're the CEO. You just walked out of the office. Is that not your office? And he said, no, my office is downstairs. We rent these out. And that one is the last one available. So I had my office. I said, all right, God, I'm waiting on the director. And not even 4 days later, this is a span of 6 days from the time this all started and the prayer. And 6 days later, I run into a friend who's completely new to Kentucky, who's been working in this ministry, who has experience and testimony from what we're working with, and she agrees to come on the job. And so, in the matter of 6 days, I have the vision, I have the office, and I have the partner. And we begin rolling, and we begin working with kids. And would you come to believe 2 years later, the vision God gave me is coming into some kinks and some issues, and we're seeing issues of it being unsustainable at a staff level to mentor all these kids. And so I'm having another crisis. I'm like, Lord, this is becoming unsustainable to handle. My small team of staff can't work with every single kid calling from every county surrounding us. And I called my sister in a panic saying, this is the vision God gave me. I don't have a backup plan. And I'm at another dead end, thinking we're gonna have to do it unsustainably or stop doing it altogether. And the next day I get a phone call from a organization in Indiana who I had been connected with somehow, but they were Christian. They were doing what we were doing, working with the youth, but they were doing it not by staff, but by volunteers. And the next day after this dead end I come to fearfully, they call me and they say, we don't know why. We just felt like we were supposed to call you and tell you that we had a sense we were supposed to tell you we're packaging our model and training people around the country how to do it this way. And I was like, y'all, I don't know what I said at that point. And so I just tell these stories because these are the stories of me coming to multiple dead ends, of me having no faith, no courage except to wait and to cling unto the dead end. And then the Lord showing me that all along this was his heart and his plan and his will, and that he had the way and he is the way. And so I think of on my heart today is a story about a young boy who's being trafficked, who has autism. and is being used by a woman who has manipulated him to believe that it's her job to satisfy him. And she brings him over. She's older, he's younger, he's 18. And because of his mental illness, he doesn't oftentimes know how to navigate relationships or know what's normal and not normal. And so she brings parties over to have sex with him and tells him that they're pleasing him. And what's really going on is she's trafficking a very, very vulnerable boy. She's also convinced him that she is a mother in the hospital who, and she's having trouble wiring money to the hospital from her bank account, and has convinced him that they can do it through his bank account. And so she launders tens of thousands of dollars through this vulnerable boy's bank account, who believes he's helping someone in the hospital, for someone he loves, who is obviously cleaning and laundering criminally type cash through his account. And we're working with him and helping him to recognize the signs of exploitation and abuse. And his mentor and our staff are walking alongside of them. And he's slowly, kind of seeing some of those signs. And the long-term concern is his vulnerability to re-exploitation, just because of the challenges of navigating workplace safety, relational safety. And so we've been working on budgets and life skills and workplace skills. And recently he was on an outing with his mentor, and he said, because of my trauma and my autism, I feel scared when I walk through doors into new places. And he said, but when I'm with you, I don't. And I think that is just on my heart today, because it's such a picture of who the Lord is to us. He's our refuge, our stronghold, our shield. And he protects us and makes us safe. And we are able to just be a momentary reflection of that to a child who maybe at this time doesn't trust God, but hopefully will one day. And I think of another girl. I'll call her Ashaya. She a school counselor called me, and Ashaya walked into her office and said, I have been selling my body for years and I don't know how to stop. And the reality is, she was working at a fast food drive-through, and some guy came through and knew she was probably really poor, and said, you're so beautiful and I can teach you how to make money. And she thought it would help her break out of generational poverty. And she had heartache from childhood sexual abuse and fatherhood abandonment. And the sex was kind of meeting some of those needs. And she just didn't know how to stop, because it was meeting so many needs. And so we have been able to work with her and help her process that trauma, process her worth, process what she wants for her life to exit those situations. I think of girls we were called on recently whose mothers undressed them and said, I need naked photos of you because I've got to know your size so I can go get bras for you. No, those photos are being sold on the internet to pedophiles. And I think of girls whose mothers were dating pedophiles, and those pedophiles used the daughters in the home to have sleepovers with countless of their friends from school for having to saying, I'll host your birthday and birthday party. And he's giving them alcohol and drugs and taking turns with them when they're not coherent. And these are the stories we're working with. And I have tried to run from the call because of the intensity of the call. And at this point, the Lord has so gripped my heart for these kids. And my invitation to you today is that you would do what I've done, which is give my yes to Jesus. That's all I'm asking. Is I don't know what it looks like for you at this time. There's a lot of ways to say yes to this. But that's what we're asking, is that you would join us and that you would say yes to Jesus for these kids and partner with us and help us. When I think of these kids, the only thing on my mind right now is knowing how many there are, knowing their stories. The only thing on my mind is how many more are there? And so we are stretching ourselves to reach them. And the only way we do that is by more people saying yes to Jesus alongside of us. And so that's our story. I hope it not only encouraged you about how much we need you financially and as mentors and evangelists and disciplers of these youth, um, but we completely need your yes in order to um, go into the darkness that they're in and help them completely escape a life of that could be deadly in the end. That could be a lifetime of addiction and cycles and trauma and pain. So we need your yes in whatever form that looks like, and I just pray that you would work that out with the Lord and join us in that yes to Him.